So in 1516, that was what... Oh, hello. You know, we at the Beer History Podcast are not experts. But to the best of our knowledge, the facts presented in this episode are accurate at the time of the recording.
You're listening to the Beer History Podcast, hosted by David Totaro and Dennis Abdulhamid. Today's guest, Joe Yarbrough from Drinking and Driving and Relationships. And now, here are the hosts of the Beer History Podcast, David Totaro and Dennis Abdulhamid.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the newest episode of the Beer History Podcast. I am your host, David Quickstab Totaro.
Quickstab?
With me, as always, is Dennis the Dandy Abdulhamid.
That's me. Wait, why am I looking at that camera? This is my camera.
We've got a special guest today.
Extremely special.
He's pretty special.
Like the eating crayons kind of special.
Joe Yarbrough. If you ever watched or listened to Drinking and Driving or Relationships.
I'm sorry, that's Drinking and Drive-In.
I'm sorry. There's no G's.
There's N apostrophe.
There are no G's. Joe's the host of both of those podcasts. I've co-hosted Drinking and Drive-In with him many times, so you can check that out too. So today we're going to talk about craft beer in the United States of America, the history of it, and where it is today. So let's get started, Joe. What you know about craft beer?
What do I know about craft beer? Well, I do know that, I mean, if we're going back to the beginning of the country, many of the founding fathers were brewers.
This is absolutely true, but they did not brew craft beer.
I mean, it was less than 2 million barrels a year.
It didn't exist. It was less than 2 million barrels a year.
So, I mean, it was pre-craft.
Most likely.
Are we talking about like George Washington? Was he like one of the first crafters?
Well,
first president and first
exactly.
crafter?
They were brewing beer even before that.
You know what this...
back to like the 1600s.
They were brewing on the boat over.
This almost reminds me of the that one scene in Dazed Confused. It's like, yeah, man, and like George Washington, man, like he grew weed, like fields of it, man. and Martha would come home and have like a fat blunt waiting for him. If you've seen the movie, you'll know what I'm talking about. But if not, then
You won't.
you need to watch the movie.
All right, so I'm gonna pour us each a beer. I brought 3 beers here. They're all from some of the early craft breweries in the United States.
Thou sayest not.
What?
I'm saying you don't say, but
Oh.
in Old English, thou sayest not.
Doth thou?
Is that
All
a
right.
Samuel Jackson?
That is the Samuel Jackson. It'll get you drunk. All right, this here is Goose Island Oktoberfest. These are all Oktoberfest beers in a Brooklyn Brewery glass, which also is an early craft beer brewery.
I'm glad you handed me this one because I've had many upon many of the old Sam Jackson there.
Samuel Adams, Boston Beer Company, also very old craft brewery.
All right, so you know that I
one's
don't
for you,
like
Denny.
a lot of beers, so this is probably the better tasting of the 3.
I think that, well, they're all pretty similar, but I think you'll like this one.
This, and I've said it on, if you listen to my podcast, I've said it many times, that is my favorite, you know, you have to give everything like an asterisk. That is my favorite mass-produced seasonal beer.
Wow, really? At all seasonal beers, period?
Yeah.
Interesting.
The mass-produced, like widely, so available like in all 50 states.
Yeah.
Because there are others that are like, oh, they're regional, so you can only get them in certain places. But
Yeah, like Schlafly.
yeah, exactly.
Yeah.
Like Schlafly.
This, mine's Sierra Nevada Oktoberfest. Oops. Which, another...
He'll edit that on
though.
post.
So, L'chaim.
Shalom? No, it's Oktoberfest. Prost.
There you go.
Prost.
That makes more sense. Prost.
Toast? I don't know.
It sounds like Prost.
Cooked bread.
So, Joe mentioned 2 million barrels. That is actually one of the very first... it wasn't an official definition of what a craft brewery is. Craft beer didn't really exist yet. This was back in the 70s, 1976. But they needed to make a distinction between large breweries and small breweries, which was just the term they used, small and large. And then what they did was they put out this tax credit. So at the time, it was $9 a barrel. That's how they taxed all breweries. And they were like, oh, well, these little guys, let's give them a break. And this 1976 tax credit came out, and it dropped it to $7 per barrel for small breweries. Right. And the way they defined it was under 2 million barrels. And that stuck for a really long time.
Was there anything smaller, like mom and pop shop kind of thing?
I mean, there wasn't any designation for that at the time.
So not like microbrewery?
No, actually, microbrewery, that term was first coined in like 1983 in like a New York Times article. I actually have that. It's funny you should mention. I have that printed out right here. This is actually a really funny article because, so this is, just imagine this, right? This is 1983. Nobody really knows anything about craft beer. There's a couple small craft breweries.
I sure as hell didn't know anything in 1983.
Yes, I was too. But in California, it was happening. It was starting to happen. And, Silicon Valley was a big deal back then, and a lot was happening in the tech world. So they wrote this article in the New York Times. The name of the article is "A High-Tech Beer from Silicon Valley." And this is the first time anybody ever used that anyone knows of the term microbrewery, like on paper. So they say the West Coast has been especially active in spawning microbreweries, likely inspired by the granddaddy of small California brewers, San Francisco's Anchor Steam Brewery, which we'll talk about that soon. They're like the first craft brewery in the United States. Anyway, blah, blah, blah. It says it's actually a lot of interesting stuff in here, but the part that's funny is it really says this. Despite admirable intentions and some pretty good products, many of the new beers are pretty awful. And the breweries are short-lived. So this is the state of craft beer back then.
This is crap.
Yeah, they're like, no, they kind of suck, though. Neat, but terrible.
But I mean, finding, like, getting all of the ingredients and stuff like that, I mean, that's now if you wanted to start a brewery today, it's never been easier.
Yeah.
Now, business, if you're good at brewing beer, that's a whole nother thing. But, like, to start one, it's like...
Oh, logistically.
It's, like, exactly, logistically
Yeah, you
speaking,
can source it
super
anything
easy.
you want just about.
As long as all it takes is money. Mm-hmm. But back then, it's like, great, I have money, but I don't know where to get
Where do I
hops.
get this stuff?
Exactly.
Yeah, that's a good point.
You use it on Amazon of 1983, so you could probably find it there.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. I hadn't actually thought about that because, at the time, there were a lot of breweries, but the types of varieties available was probably next to nothing, You had Anheuser-Busch and a lot of these big, commercial breweries. They were always using their stock from probably farms that...
Yeah. Oh, yeah. It's there. Yeah. So
they didn't
not going to buy anything off of them.
But but it was stuff being grown for them. Yeah. Now it's crazy the amount of. You could get your stock from all over the world. Get hops from Germany, from wherever.
Jawohl.
From Japan.
Hey.
What? What did you say?
Jawohl.
Pork.
Exactly. Do they have Swedish hops?
I don't know.
No,
it's out.
I don't
north of the hop belt.
I don't think they're that sweet though. They're like Swedish.
Oh, totally sweet, bro.
Okay.
Hey, dang it! I'm gonna be kicking the whole episode. Anyway, kick it. So back to this. We were listening to Beastie Boys earlier. Back to the definition of a craft brewery, right? Which is sort of what I was trying to roll into. That 2 million barrels sort of was just used as this general, if it's a big brewery or a small brewery for decades. And it wasn't until like 2006 where the Brewers Association, who sort of like controls the definition of these things, at least they're the source that most people consider.
Okay.
They made an official set of standards. Like, this is a craft brewery, and one of them was 2 million barrels. So they said, okay, officially, you can't be a craft brewery if you're brewing more than that.
Wow.
And at the time,
that's a lot of beer still, though.
It is. At the time, they also said you have to be making at least half of your own product. So it still is a popular thing, but back then it was very popular.
Outsourcing it?
Outsource your beer and have other breweries make your beer for you.
There's like a place in Lakeland that makes a lot of beers. I can't think of what
Brew
it's called.
Hub.
Yeah, like you can.
Yeah, it's pretty
drive
neat
by
actually.
You're like,
they're a little different though, because I think you actually go to their facility and you brew the beer yourself on their equipment. Well, so that's a little different.
The cool thing about that place,
that's not a contract.
The cool thing about that place, because if you think about, just say, well, I'll go back to Schlafly because I'm pretty familiar with those guys, but they're huge in the Midwest. But shipping stuff from the Midwest to here and all that kind of stuff might be a pain. So if they could just brew it like in Lakeland, Florida, the exact same thing, and now they've got their. Because you think about even Anheuser-Busch, not everything's made in St. Louis. They've got a dozen of them throughout the country. I think there's like one in Jacksonville.
Yep.
So
Yeah, Yingling, they've got a big brewery in Tampa. I mean, that's pretty common.
I don't think I knew. Oh yeah, isn't there supposed to be like a hotel or something? A Yingling hotel going up in Tampa?
Grand Budapest Hotel.
Yes. Yeah, you're right. Yep, that's it. Got it.
The Yingling Hotel. I've not heard of that. Well, that sounds interesting.
I'll let me tell you about it. No, I'm just kidding. I literally just saw an article. I didn't read the article. I just saw it. I was like, oh, cool.
Let's talk about this. So
it's gonna have a lot of rooms. Beer on tap in the room.
Is that actually true?
No, but what if it was true?
Cool.
Like, how cool would that be?
You know what? I read something recently about a hotel that had beer on tap in the rooms. What was that? I don't know. That actually is a really neat concept.
It comes out of the faucet.
It had two taps. I saw pictures.
You're like, go to brush your teeth. And beer comes out. You're like, oh, this is horrible.
Not good with toothpaste.
My teeth are loose.
They find out there's this like horrible reaction between toothpaste and beer that nobody ever knew about.
I thought a funny Onion article would be like if they found out that like Listerine caused like tooth to fall out. It's so hot it just burns your teeth out of your head. I thought that would be funny, but
that would be funny. That would be so funny. Anyway, so they have to make at least half the product. We talked about this in the first episode, how I'm horrible with tangents, and I just constantly go off on tangents. And
with tannins?
With tannins all the time. So many tannins. It's just going to be a nonstop struggle that everyone will have to just deal with. So the last rule was your flagship beer had to be made from 100% barley grain bill. So you couldn't have anything else in it.
Seriously?
Yeah, that was the rule in 2006.
That's weird.
Yeah, and a lot of people thought that was good because it's like, you know, they wanted something that was that wasn't, I don't know. I guess at the time using adjuncts was considered more of a either cheap, you know, way to make your beer cheaper, which is true, and a lot of big breweries do that.
Like, I was just saying that's
rice and corn
what
and things.
The big guys do, yeah.
But I think it also was like almost gimmicky to add things to beer back then. It wasn't as common of a practice. And I mean, 2006 wasn't that long ago, but a lot's changed since then. So.
You know, that's why Busch is cheaper than Budweiser.
Why?
It's the same beer, but they the adjunct they use.
What, they just changed the grain bill?
They use rice in Budweiser, but they use corn in Busch, and corn's cheaper, so they can sell.
Is that really the difference between the two?
Yeah.
I never knew that.
It's the same beer.
Fun fact. So
now you know.
So 2010, something happened. One of the founding fathers of the Brewers Association, one of the original breweries, was Boston Beer Company, Sam Adams. And they were approaching that 2 million barrel mark.
Yeah.
And they were like, hey, guys, can you help us out? This kind of sucks. What are we going to do? If we hit this 2 million mark, you know, we're still independent. We're still making craft beer. Yeah. How, you know, but we're not going to be a craft brewery now. So the Brewers Association discussed it, and they decided to raise it from 2 million to 6 million. And they did. And a lot of people flipped out. A lot of people weren't okay with it. And, you know, Sam Adams, Boston Beer gets a lot of hate from a lot of craft beer.
I give them nothing but love.
Me too.
That's what it's not. They're hating on them, like throwing shade or whatever. It's jealousy. That's really what it is. I'm not even kidding. Like when someone's like hating on somebody, it's because they're like struggling to sell like 300 barrels a year, and they're like, yeah, those guys they're big. It's like, you know, I used to listen to this music before it was cool, kind of thing.
Yeah,
it's like this weird hipster mentality.
Well, you know, I mean, a lot of people are just like, they see it all over the place, and it's less expensive than most craft beer, so they just assume it's garbage commercialized beer that, you know, is just mass produced or whatever.
That Oktoberfest is very well made.
Yeah, it's great. I love it. I think it's fantastic.
Yeah, I'm drinking it right now, right? So
yeah, that's what you
It's pretty good. I like it.
You like it?
Yeah.
So anyway, they did do it though. They raised it to 6 million, and then they also added some other rules. So they took away that that rule where your flagship beer had to be 100% barley, which also got a lot of people upset. But I think they realized that craft beer is it's an art, and as the brewer, you should be able to do whatever you want to do. I mean, this is what your creation is, and this is how you want it to be, and it shouldn't be constrained. Yes, Joe, did you have a question?
I did have a question. So, when you get like a conglomerate, or you get like a merging of brands, kind of like Boston Beer did.
With
Dogfish Head.
Dogfish Head, yeah.
Is that 6 million each, or is it combined?
No, they're one brewery now, and that's one total.
Wow.
Yeah, one grand total.
So
they're still under 6 million, but
I mean,
I think they're approaching.
I would say they can't be much under.
So here's, I have a lot of opinions on this whole definition thing, and I know we're spending a lot of time on this, but and just to cap it off real quick, they also added a rule where you have to be independent, and what that means is specifically you're not owned more than 25% by an alcohol industry entity that is not a craft brewer. So
like a known
Anheuser-Busch is in the alcohol industry, but they're not a craft brewer. They don't fall into that definition.
Right.
So if they own more than 25% of your brewery, you're not a craft brewery now, according to their definition. And that sounds like, oh, well, okay, that kind of makes sense. Man, there are so many big craft breweries that are not craft breweries because of that rule. And like Founders, which is one of my favorites, is one of them. And to me, I think that the definition of a craft brewery should be based on the product, and that's it.
Style.
I don't think volume should be involved, and I don't think ownership should be involved. Honestly, if you're putting out good quality beer and you're changing it up and trying new things and experimenting, I don't know. I mean, to me, that's craft beer. But I guess maybe the right way to do it is, you're not a craft brewery, but you're still making craft beer. I don't know.
It's craft beer from a non-craft brewery. Which that's where the
term, I mean, Anheuser-Busch puts out
that's where the term
what you would call craft beer, I guess.
Crafty beer is what they call that.
She's crafty.
Exactly. And when we go back to
and she's just my type.
But a crafty beer is like Anheuser-Busch, a giant Globo brand. They're making something under some it doesn't say Anheuser-Busch on it. It'll say like almost kind of like they bought a Rolling Rock years ago, and it says Latrobe Brewing, St. Louis, Missouri. Latrobe is a city in Pennsylvania.
Yeah.
Latrobe, Pennsylvania is where, Rolling Rock was originally made.
Oh.
So they say Latrobe Brewing, St. Louis, Missouri, because Anheuser-Busch bought those guys.
Oh, interesting.
So that's where a lot of these crafty brands, it'll say like, I don't know, Starfire Brewing, St. Louis, Missouri.
Yeah.
I was like, I lived in St. Louis. I never heard Starfire Brewing or whatever.
Yeah.
And that's because it's Anheuser-Busch putting out crafty beer.
They're crafty beer. Yeah, crafty beer. I like that. Is that an actual term people use? I've never heard that.
Pete used it in the episode that we did of my podcast.
Oh,
Listen,
yeah.
watch.
Crafty beer.
Drinking and driving.
Pete.
Friday nights at 8. No, I'm just kidding. After the news.
On NBC. So, like we were talking about earlier, the founding fathers and all that stuff, Dennis had asked that question. They've got records of beer being brewed back to the 1600s. I mean, essentially, when we first, traveled from...
Teleported.
We transferred from
Europe
America to what is now the United States. I mean, breweries were a part of that whole system. I mean, they used it for nutrition, and it was just like a crop.
I'll say because
bakery,
they didn't understand microorganisms and whatnot, so you didn't just drink water.
Yeah, because you didn't want to die.
Well, because they didn't realize that if they just boiled the water and all that kind of stuff,
they'd
be good. They were just like, I make
sometimes
beer
water makes me die.
Yeah,
so I'm gonna not drink it as much. I feel deathy. This water tastes deathy.
Shut up, you 5-year-old. Here, have this ale.
They actually called
Drink
it
this
little.
ale.
They called it little beer that they made for the children.
Yeah.
After they brewed it,
Uh-huh.
they would brew another batch off of the spent grain.
Yeah, he's not kidding.
That's amazing.
That's called little
No,
beer.
it was. They still do it in a lot of countries.
This is the beer history podcast, isn't it?
They brew
From my A game.
these low alcohol, less than 2% beers, and they have a lot of nutrition in them, and they're clean and safe to drink if you're living in a place that
More
needs
Ovaltine,
clean,
please.
safe drinks. Chocolate, back to chocolate steps. So anyway, in 1660, they actually have this old map of even old New York was once New Amsterdam.
I knew that.
So New Amsterdam in 1660 had 26 breweries and taverns, right? So we're talking the 1600s in one city. That's
Was it
quite
was
a
it
bit.
a 3-tier system?
They did not have the 3-tiered system in place at that time. Great question, though. That's a whole nother episode, the 3-tiered system. So all the way from that point until like the Civil War, which was the mid 1800s, beer was basically a local thing.
I feel like it was 1863 or something.
Was it actually 1863? I'm bad with dates. Yeah, I literally have notes and I don't know. Yes, that sounds right. So anyway, they they brewed beer locally. So you would have little breweries, or it would be just brewed at home. Nobody really bottled it. Nobody was doing it commercially. There was no distributing.
I mean,
of
that's
beer
the way Europe
for
still
hundreds
is.
of years.
Like a lot of places in Europe are still that way, where.
But a lot of them.
Well, now
know.
now, but you'll still find like taverns, they say, in like out of the way places there where the beer's made on premise, and that's it.
That's kind of how the craft beer industry is nowadays, right? I mean, if you looked at all the craft breweries in the U.S., the vast majority of them are like that, not really distributing. So kegs,
Like
I
Dirty
guess,
Ore,
is one
who
thing,
I,
but oh yeah, Dirty Ore.
Dirty Ore,
Nice plug there.
They do not distribute
Great local
at all.
beer. Yeah,
You can only get it at Dirty Ore.
you got to go there, just like in the 1800s. So,
In my covered wagon, up 520.
so basically, in the early 1900s, the tail end of the 1800s, that was when the commercializing beer started to become an actual thing, and the whole 1900s were just completely different than any other period in history when it came to beer, not just in the U.S. but everywhere.
Yeah, thanks a lot, Prohibition.
Prohibition. No, I mean it was before Prohibition.
You said 1900s, though.
Yeah, Prohibition was in the 1900s, but I'm saying commercializing of beer was before Prohibition. It wasn't
not
due
during?
to it. Not they distributed whiskey for medicinal purposes.
I think I did the Coors tour, and during Prohibition,
That rhymed.
They made like a like malted beverage, a non-alcoholic malted beverage, like an Ovaltine. Is like that's what helped keep like Coors afloat.
Yeah, I think Budweiser did like sodas and milk or something like that. I don't know. They ice cream. I think it was ice cream. Dennis, could you fact check that, please?
Fizzy yellow ice cream. Are there adjuncts in this ice cream? It's rice cream.
It's got lactose in it. So anyway, so you've got like lagers starting to emerge at this time too, and up until that point, ales, that's all anybody brewed. Once lagers became a thing, they became popular in the U.S. very quickly.
That's like the American beer. When you think of like everyone thinks of an American beer, that's your American beer right there.
Oh yeah, absolutely. And at that point, before Prohibition, lagers overtook ales, and it never went back.
This is some pretty interesting stuff. So, Coors was an engineering company.
What, before they were a brewery?
No, during Prohibition.
Really?
Yingling sold ice cream.
I knew there was ice cream somewhere.
Anheuser-Busch sold 24 non-alcoholic Prohibition products.
I mean, they basically sell that now.
Including ice cream, soft drinks, and truck bodies.
Huh?
I don't know what that
Truck
is.
bodies?
Did you say shark? Oh, I thought I said shark bodies. Shark bodies.
They dabbled in everything. Shark bodies,
Taxidermy.
Pabst Blue Ribbon sold cheese.
Ooh.
And then they sold the business.
Blue cheese, I assume.
They sold
Ribbon cheese.
the business to Kraft in 1933.
No way.
That's what it says
Wait.
here.
So,
And that's where craft beer comes from. We figured it out.
I would love to know.
That's
This is the type of stuff that I get interested in. I would love to know what the brand of cheese was that got sold to Kraft, and if it still exists. Would it be
Velveeta.
funny if Kraft singles were perhaps Blue Ribbon's cheese?
It would make sense.
make so
Could you
much
imagine if American cheese.
American cheese. Like,
Yeah, but
PBR, baby.
most of the companies, it was just soft drinks, candy, and ice cream.
Yep.
It was
Okay. That makes
Velveeta,
sense.
Velveeta
makes it better.
The cheese whiz that like they used to pour on broccoli was like the big thing.
Dude, first of all, used to. I still use Velveeta on my broccoli, and it is delicious.
Velveeta does not have a place in my house.
Wow. Rude.
No escuda.
No escuda. Hey. So anyway, now this is where things get crazy, okay? Everybody needs to pay attention. I know when I start talking about numbers in real life, people's eyes usually start to glaze over. But this is cool. In 1873, there were 4,131 breweries in the United States. It's a lot. It was the most there had ever been in U.S. history, and that was the point where it started to go in the opposite direction. So when you get to around the Prohibition time era, which was in the 20s and the early 30s, there was less than 700 before it even started, before Prohibition. There was less than 700. So from 1873 to 1920, it had dropped like exponentially, a huge amount. Then, of course, during Prohibition, there were 0 breweries.
I don't understand.
Because somehow breweries weren't able to, there were 0 official breweries. How did they not jump on the medicinal or religious bandwagon? There was like a...
Medicinal beer? I don't know if you can,
medicinal whiskey.
Yeah, because it's like you can make a tincture with it and... all those kind of things.
Are you saying it actually makes sense for it to be medicine?
Well, you look at, what is it? The Angostura bitters.
Yeah, I love that
It's
stuff.
loaded with alcohol, but it was like some sort of medicinal, and...
Dang it, I thought I had my bitters next to me. I don't think it's loaded with alcohol.
It's like, no, it's high.
No, it's only like 20% or something. Dennis?
I'm going to say it's...
I'm sorry, what was that?
Angostura bitters. It's like ANGO...
BINGO.
ESTOR. Just type bitters.
RSTLNE. I'm going to say it's like 70 proof.
No. See.
That's what I'm going to say.
Now you have me second guessing by 20%. Maybe it is higher. It's funny. If you look on the back of the bottle of bitters, I'm sure many of you have bitters at home. If you don't, you should. There's all this weird stuff on there. It's almost like it's designed and intended not to be used with like your mixed drinks. It's like, put it on your vegetables, and literally, I'm not even making this up. Put it on your vegetables. It says put it on your
what is it, like
ice
Worcestershire
cream
sauce?
Like you could put it on anything apparently, and it's
so it's
supposed
sriracha, because that's
I don't
what I
know,
put on everything.
Add flavor and nutrition. Dennis, what you got?
According to Wikipedia, it says 44.7% alcohol by volume.
No, it's like
To call it a comeback.
right in the what? It was like you were just as close as I was. Actually, I was closer. I was only off by 20%.
I said 70 proof, so I said 35%.
Did he say proof or did he say percent?
We'll have to go back and see.
We're gonna have to
The
do
tail of the tape.
We're gonna have to
I
do
said
a
70
fact
proof.
check on
I
that
said
one.
70 proof.
So 700 breweries in 1920. Prohibition happens, and then you've got the 40s, the 50s, the 60s, and it just dropped and dropped and dropped throughout that whole time period. So now we're at
before you give a number, tell me the year.
1965.
1965. Okay.
What do you guys think? Based on
How many breweries are in America
in
in
1965?
1965?
5.
I'm going to say 22.
Man, you guys are making it so much less exciting. It was 163.
Damn.
Gosh.
And I'm surprised there were that many.
There was never, after that 4,000 point, there's never been that low at all. What your guys' guesses, I'm saying. They're
Wow.
way lower than,
No.
I never got that low.
I just assumed
You got close.
like 22, I said, because you
Double
had
digits.
all the big ones that were probably around when I was a kid.
Yeah.
So everything that's not craft brew, I just assumed was maybe 20-something-ish.
Oh, I get you. Yeah. Yeah, so there still were some smaller breweries, but they just weren't as common. So, and that brings us to the segue here, in which
Have you ever ridden one?
we referenced earlier. 1965 is when you guys know Maytag, the Maytag appliances. So the guy who
Maytag
founded that company, his grandson, whose name was Fritz Maytag, was sitting in a bar in San Francisco, and
Fritz Maytag.
he's drinking this beer, which was Anchor Steam beer, which is made in San Francisco, and he's talking to the bartender, and he's like, "Man, this is such a good beer." I'm like motioning. I literally could just hold my beer and do it.
I mean,
And,
I could do that, but mine's empty.
So I don't know how accurate the story is, but this is what the legend is or whatever. So the bartender's like, "Oh, if you like Anchor Steam, you better drink it up because they're about to close their doors forever." And he's like, "Are you kidding me?" So he goes, and the guy's like, "Yeah, they're just down the street." So he goes to the Anchor Brewing Company, and he talks to the owner, and the owner's like, "Yeah, we're not doing very well with sales." and we're going to close shop, just like all the other breweries in the U.S. That was the trend basically. So this dude's rich. He's like a rich guy. He's got I don't think he was working or anything. He's just an heir to the Maytag fortune.
Poor guy.
So he's like buying it. So he buys 51% of the company, and man, he starts making all these crazy beers that
so
people
he only
had never
gets like
had before.
6.5 ounces of a beer.
What?
He owns 51% of 12-ounce pour.
Every one of those pours, I own that much.
Was that a math joke?
Math joke.
I mean,
so anyway, and now Anchor Steam in and of itself is a fantastic beer. It really is, and it was different than anything people were drinking at the time, which is why Fritz Maytag was so drawn to it. He thought it was such a good beer, but he wanted to start expanding out and trying things that people hadn't done before. So he brewed Anchor Porter, which nobody was brewing porters in the U.S. That was something that was only happening in England. He brewed their Christmas Ale, which they still make to this day, and Liberty Ale, which is an important one because that's considered like the first modern IPA. So IPAs had existed in the UK, but English IPAs aren't the same as American IPAs. And this, Liberty's a very hoppy,
I was going to ask,
bitter beer.
Is it the hop profile that they have over there? Is it like different hops or?
Yes.
Gotcha.
Yeah, they use totally different hops. And, English beers, they focus more on the subtle bitterness, as opposed to the flavor, like the bitter flavor. Because
Gotcha.
you have bittering hops that give you a bitterness, but then you have
they do use the term
that
like,
hoppy flavor.
They're like, give me a pint of bitter.
They do, yeah, which is, that's like one of their big things over there, but which is why you just said that.
Bitter. Bitter.
Don't be bitter. I love English bitters, so anyway.
And they love you.
They do. And then Old Foghorn, that's another one. So
Foghorn Leghorn, he's my favorite from Looney Tunes.
I said.
Something wrong with that boy.
Jinx. So, so at the time when Fritz Maytag bought out that majority portion, they'd already been around for almost 70 years. So this was an old brewery to begin with, and their beer, Anchor Steam, is a weird style. Like nobody makes steam beers even to this day. It's not something that pretty much anyone makes. So it's a really neat beer. Anyway, so this kind of started, sparked something in California that changed the face of beer.
And what year did you say that was that he?
65 is when he bought it.
That's when he bought it. Okay,
Yes.
Gotcha.
And now there was still some other elements in the environment that were keeping craft beer from becoming a thing. And one of the big ones was homebrewing was illegal ever since Prohibition. So how can you get into craft beer, brewing craft beer, and making and experimenting if you literally can't do it legally at your house?
It's like that TV show Moonshiners.
Yeah,
but with like beer.
And they all end up didn't they get arrested eventually?
I don't know. I don't even know how much of that show is actually real. I think a lot of it's staged.
Yeah, well, this is real, buddy. So, so in 1978, there was a huge leap forward with this whole entire situation, and that was when Jimmy Carter passed the HR 1337 bill, which federally legalized brewing beer at your house, and you could brew quite a bit too. 100 gallons per year per adult.
His brother made Billy beer.
Yeah, that's right.
Jimmy Carter's brother, the president's brother. Apparently, he was kind of like the black sheep of the family. And I mean, I wasn't around then, but so like Billy Carter is.
I wasn't around then.
I wasn't. I was
literally not alive.
I was not around yet. But he made his own beer. Billy beer is what it's called. Yeah.
So remember Jimmy Carter. The Carter family. Thank a Carter, everybody.
Carter and Carter for the beer.
For the beer. It's a regional joke. So anyway,
do you think another regional?
This is another fun fact, by the way. I don't know how much Dennis will probably know this. Leet speak, Leet speak. If you're like a nerdy gamer person that's around my age, Leet speak is like that's like when you use letters or numbers instead of letters and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. So back when that became a thing, it was called Leet speak, and like one of the biggest ones that people would use in games was 1337, which means leet. So if somebody was doing awesome or something like that, they'd say, "Oh, that guy's leet. He's totally leet, bro." And the bill was HR 1337. I think that's pretty funny. Slide whistle. Pew. There's a few nerdy gamers out there that agree with me.
Because I was thinking crickets.
Do the cricket noise. So,
Thank you.
1978. This bill is passed, which makes it legal federally, but it's not legal on the state level. So right off the bat, a bunch of states legalized it as well. So,
Right.
So it had a pretty profound effect. It took a long time. I think 2013. That's how long it took for the last 2 states to finally legalize home
Mississippi.
brewing. Mississippi was one of them.
Yes.
Very good. Can you guess the other one?
Alabama?
Yes. Did you guys really just get?
What?
I am impressed.
Surprised it wasn't Florida.
Nah, we're awesome. Like that.
No, we're horrible. No, I'm actually very surprised it wasn't
I
Florida.
mean, I knew that it was before 2013 in Florida. I had a Mr. Beer kit in 08.
Oh yeah. Yes, I also had a Mr. Beer kit back then.
I had a magic set.
The Gathering, or like
No, like
to do magic.
to do magic.
I made a magic.
Totally lead, bro.
I didn't make beer.
I made a magic hat clone before.
I made magic. Some would say making beer is making magic.
Magic hat. I made a magic hat clone. That was one of the beers that I made from extract.
Did you use fruit?
No, I used extract. I used glub
Extract.
glub.
Done.
Glub glub.
He literally just poured it in water as powder and mixed it. Beer.
More Ovaltine, please.
So
circle.
anyway, 78, 79, that was when the country hit its lowest point in brewery. So going back, right?
22.
1873, what was it? 4,131 breweries. 1978, what'd you say?
Oh, wait. So we're going to go to 78.
78.
So this is like right as I'm about
This is
to
when
be.
this law was passed.
I'm going to say, because of the other number you said, I'm going to say 78. Why not? 78.
78 and 78. What do you say, Denny?
I would say 4,232.
No, you're way.
Wow, you are bad at this.
$1, Bob.
It was 44 was the lowest point.
Oh,
I mean,
44.
78's not a bad,
It was 79 when it hit 44. Well, that was the lowest point, which means from that point forward, everything started going up. And the 80s was a big,
started from the
important
bottom.
decade.
Now
for
they're
craft
here.
beer.
they're moving on up.
There was a brewery that opened in 1976 called New Albion, and they were pretty influential with the craft beer. They didn't last
Did you
very
say
long either.
influenza?
They did not have influenza. They were influential. Dennis's face palm.
They had influenza then. We have COVID now.
So you had this guy whose name was I don't know if I'm going to pronounce it right. Jack McAuliffe. Well, anyway, so he was in the Navy and he had just completed a tour of duty.
Hey, sailor.
In Europe. You're gonna have to shut up, or we're never gonna get through this. He did a tour of duty in Europe. He'd just gotten back, and he was like, "All right, I want to get some of this beer I've been drinking." And he's like, "Oh." So he decides, I'm going to open my own brewery because... Oh, look at that.
We are now open for business.
So he created New Albion Ale, which was very different from what everybody else was drinking. For one thing, it was an ale.
It was an ale instead of a
which
lager,
was not very popular. There were ales out there at the time, but not very many. And for another, it had a lot of flavor. Actually, Boston Beer. Did you ever catch that remake of New Albion they did? Maybe like 5 years ago, 6 years ago, or something like that.
Do you have some?
No, they only made it for like, it would be terrible now. It's not.
Oh, yeah,
beer. That's not aging beer at all. It's a hoppier beer. You just wanted to use that. You didn't know when.
Is it any good?
I think it's fantastic.
Yeah.
It's one of those beers that, like, if you're a hop head and you're into the crazy stuff, you're going to think it's boring. But I think people who are more seasoned craft beer drinkers that have like, learned how much there is in like German beers, for example, which are a lot simpler most of the time, but they have so many subtle flavors.
Dude,
that
I
are great.
love German beer.
Fits into that. So this is when stuff starts really happening, right? So you got Sierra Nevada in 1979, Boulder Beer in 1979, and Boston Beer Company was 1984. So these early mid-'80s breweries were the big ones. Boston Beer was 84. Brooklyn Brewery was also 1984, which I love Brooklyn. Brooklyn's got a pretty crazy history with brewing too. They were like maybe a leftover from the whole New Amsterdam thing. They were sort of the place for brewing beer in the U.S. for like a pretty long time, and then they ended up with none until Brooklyn Brewery opened up.
That's so crazy how that happened.
Complete, like people didn't even know that there was a history of it there until Brooklyn Brewery came back. Then Bell's was 85, one of my favorite breweries, but then 1988, that was when stuff really started getting crazy. So 1988 was a huge year. Goose Island, that was a 1988 brewery. They're huge. New Belgium, well, no, they were 91. North Coast, who makes Old Rasputin, one of my favorite
When did you say
beers.
New Belgium came? Sorry.
That was 91.
91, wow.
Yes. Rogue was 88. Great Lakes, Deschutes, all 1988. I mean, ton of breweries opened in 88 that still are with us today. The big thing, though, was the percent growth, right? Throughout the late 80s, all the way through the 90s, most of the 90s. We're talking like 20% increases or more. There was some
like
years
every year,
every single year. There was even 100% increase a few different times. 91 rolled around, which, like I just said, was New Belgium. It was also Schlafly.
Come on,
St. Louis
I'll
represent.
take
There we go. Yay! And another major thing happened, legal thing. So we talked about that tax credit back in the 70s. They did another tax credit change, but this one was in the opposite direction. So they were like, okay, $9 for large brewers, $7 for small brewers. They were like, no. Now it's going to be $18 for large brewers, and we're going to just keep it at $7 for the small brewers. So this was like a kick in the balls for big beer, and that I think had a huge effect on what happened throughout the whole rest of the 90s. That craft beer all of a sudden had started having a foothold in the market,
right?
And people were starting to actually realize what was happening. Like, what is this stuff? What's happening? And then they knew what was happening, and that's what happened.
I don't know if the numbers are still there, but when we talk about craft beer versus Anheuser-Busch and all that stuff, I don't know if it's still true, the exact number, but at one point, Boston Beer, which we would say is a very large company, etc.
They're huge. Yeah.
They had less than 1% of the total beer market in the U.S.
Wait, when was this?
Within the last 10 years for sure.
Oh, yeah.
But so less than one. I mean, you think, because I would say that's a giant,
because you imagine
monolith of a company in my brain, and it's less than 1%. Like, what?
It's true, man.
That's that just shows you how many of those adjunct lagers are out there. Like for every other beer that's consumed, like all of them combined, one of those beers, half of the beers out there is going to be Budweiser.
It's basically 1% of brands owns 90% of the market. So
yeah, it's great. Like they said, it's close to 50% of all beers served is an Anheuser-Busch product.
I should have looked this up for my notes, Dennis. But can you look up if you type Brewers Association and then type craft beer percent of the market? It's higher than you think now. I mean, it's actually pretty substantial, but I mean, it's still mass marketed beer still dominates. But every year they get less of the market. Actually, beer overall, I think, has gone down the past few years, but craft beer has gone up.
25%.
Craft beer is 25% of the market. Does it have imports? Does it say what the percent is imports?
That's not important.
While Dennis looks that up, I'm going to just go through the rest of the 90s real quick. Lagunitas was 93. They're a huge one. Dogfish Head was 95.
Import is 1.8.
Oh, wow. That's small.
Oh, wait. No, I'm sorry. 19.
What? It's a very big difference. 1.8. Oh, my bad. 19.
There's no decimal point.
I was like, there's no way it's 1.8.
That was crazy. The growth in 2019. They've gone up 1.8. And craft has gone up 3.6.
Good for us. I feel like imports are sort of like
overall beer is down 1.6.
Yes. Anyway, so now we're in the 2000s. Things started to shift a little bit. There actually was a little bit of a decrease. So 1999 were over 1,600 breweries.
Wow.
Which up from, what would I say, 44 in the late 70s, right?
That's like our lifetime. So like because I was born in 81, so
Yeah.
from like less than 100 in the country, probably I'm assuming in 81,
Yeah.
to
Yep.
over 1,000. I mean, that's
No, but it gets crazy, right? So that was when we're talking,
and I mean that's like
we're talking
I'm saying to the
1999,
age where I could
2000.
start drinking
when you can start drinking.
Yeah.
All right. So we'll do guesses for what it is now in a minute. So you had like a few years where there was this weird dip, and all of a sudden, kind of around when IPA started becoming a huge thing, in the late, what do you call it? Not the 2010s,
We just say the 2000s.
the 20s. I just feel like when you say 2000s, it's like saying the
OOs.
1900s. The OOs, the double balls. That sounded way
Double
grosser
balls.
than I intended to. There was all of a
Swinging
sudden,
double balls.
it ramped up again, but it ramped up like nobody ever expected. I mean, it was like basically a vertical climb.
1.21 gigawatts.
So I'll give you a point of reference here. 1999, you have 1,651 breweries. What do you think the number of breweries was? Actually, the low in the 2000s was in 2005, 1,447. So we'll start from there. 2005, 1,400 breweries. What do you think that the number is in 2019, which is the newest number?
So roughly now.
Yeah. It's higher than this now, but this was 2019.
I don't know.
Our last complete
two
year,
of them
so.
have closed, so in our area.
Yes,
so,
that's true.
so that number, I'm gonna say 4,322.
Good guess. What do you think, Denny?
I'm going to go with 4,333.
8,386. Isn't that insane?
That's pretty insane.
That was my second guess. That's so strange.
That was my second guess. So 2015 was when we hit that mark where we finally beat that 1873 number, or I think it was 1873, and that was That was only 4 years before 2019. So it went from 4,600 to 8,300 in 4 years.
But you think about
That's
Thank
nuts.
You. Thank you. But you think about in our area, right? I mean, you've done the show with me, the other show.
Yeah.
How many of the breweries that we have gone to are more than 10 years old?
Almost none.
Exactly.
I mean, some of them are, but not very many.
I mean, it's probably
Bug Nutty. That's got to be
No,
they're
no.
over 10 years.
No, 2016.
Are you sure? No, they're not 2016. Absolutely,
I'll
definitely
fight you
not.
right now.
Look up Bug Nutty. Slave, look up Bug Nutty.
I think Playa Linda is going to be
No, Bug
one of the
Nutty's
older
way
ones.
older than 2016. Definitely. They're over 10 years old. I'm almost positive.
Maybe.
Cocoa Beach Brewing Company. Are they still around?
I passed by it one time and it wasn't open, but
They're pretty old too.
Yeah.
That's basically like in
Well,
some dude's living room. Though.
Well, Cocoa Beach is where John from Bug Nutty got started, so it's definitely older than Bug Nutty because
yeah,
he came from Cocoa Beach.
yeah, that's true. And then Florida Beer's been around.
Yes.
Well, they're a mega brewery though. I mean, they bought out a bunch of
Good.
breweries. So I don't know if you would count the timetable of how long those breweries existed.
Yeah, I mean, you would have to say where that company itself
Well,
started.
but they still sell those brands. So like Key West Ale, Sunset Ale. I mean, that beer's been around since way before Florida Beer
All right,
existed.
what was it for Bug Nutty?
Bug Nutty. We want to know what the year was.
Yeah, but what was your guess, Dave?
Oh, I'm gonna say 2008.
I said 16,
What's the answer?
12-teen.
2013.
Dang it.
So less than 10 years. Yes. So half point.
You're like, I was wrong, but I still feel like I won.
I was less wrong.
So, I mean, the last 10 years have been, not only has it been crazy with growth, but I mean, you just got to think about all the trends in beer.
Charlie and
that have
Jake's,
happened.
that's another old one in the area.
Charlie and Jake's is from the 80s.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they are a craft brewery. That's a good one. Yeah, they're probably one of the oldest ones in Florida, I would imagine.
They're like founding members of the Florida Brewers Guild. Like they're like
Yep.
early, which, hey, I'll be doing an interview with you guys. I'm gonna have to go in there and be like, hey, where's Johan? Let's do this thing. Like
Let's
now.
do this thing, man. Make it happen, Joe. So, by the way, he's not trying to get a job there. He's talking about his podcast, interviewing them for the podcast. It sounds like you're like, oh, I'm going to get an interview there.
Let me clean tables.
I'll clean your tables, whatever it takes. So, but I mean, since 2010, right? We've had like black IPAs, white IPAs. Remember when black IPAs were popular?
Double IPAs now.
Rye beers became popular.
Rye
thing.
PAs.
So, and then of course now we've got the latest trend, which I don't know if you call it a beer trend.
Hazy or sours?
Seltzers.
Oh. I was actually.
Oh, hazies. That was a big one. New England.
Hazy and sours are a big thing that I'm running into now. Like sours are everywhere.
Sours are pretty popular.
5 years ago, they were nowhere.
Not as popular. Alrighty. That's going to be it then, I think. Joe, thank you for being with us today. You want to give a little pitch, shout out?
I'm going to do like on Hot Ones. This camera, this camera, this camera, this camera. Look at it. Tell me what you got going on.
We actually have many cameras in this room, and I don't think you pointed to any of them.
I did. Yes, definitely have a listen. I have 2 podcasts out there. There's Relation Sips. There are 2 with that name. Mine is Relation Sips. It has a hyphen in the middle.
Very entertaining show, by the way.
I mean, I enjoy it. And if I didn't enjoy it, then I have marital problems. Because it's my wife and I just talking about, we've been together for like over 20 years. So actually yesterday was our dating anniversary, 23 years. Yeah, so we... Don't shake your head.
It's the longest pitch I've ever heard in my life.
Relationships, that's that show. And then we have Drinkin, DRINKIN apostrophe, and ampersand Drivin, DRIVIN apostrophe. Listen to both of them. They're great. If you like Dave, then definitely listen to Drinkin' and Drivin' as well. He's in a lot of those episodes.
It's true. He's not lying. All right. So everybody check us out on thebeerhistorypodcast.com. We've got Instagram, Twitter, Facebook, Reddit. Did I get them all, Dennis? Yeah. All right. I'm like counting like this. Check us out. All the info's on there. I've got a blog going on where you can find out what's going on when we're going to have our next episode, information about topics, and most importantly, you're going to be able to see all of my references, which I have many. Those references are important. All right. See you guys later. Bye.
You've been listening to the Beer History Podcast, a Hop Stuff LLC production. For more information and references, visit our website, thebeerhistorypodcast.com.